Cool. It's lovely to be here. I'm delighted that the Svenska Skatteverket has any interest in the agile stuff. What I will be talking about today is the synopsis that I created about 7 years ago when we were wanting to both simplify everything about agile and also make it available outside of software. So the things I'm talking about, I will never talk about product, software, testing, TDD, none of that. Everything comes down to people making decisions, getting feedback on decisions. So that's like the whole game. And if you know that, then you can apply the ideas to any social mental activity at all. So this whole thing is oriented. And when you do that, you find that the word agile, in a sense, doesn't have a meaning anymore. It's not about being agile. It's just improved teamwork. I was going to call it team.work, like the work of teams, not the teamwork inside of a team, but the work of teams. And then I was convinced that for marketing reasons, I should stay with the word agile. So it's the heart of agile, and I can tell you a bit about that. But so when you're listening, I'd like you to be thinking that this applies. We've learned since 2001 how to take those ideas and make them fit any social mental activity initiative, right? So that's the game that we've got. This is the talk I gave yesterday at a conference in Copenhagen, and I looked at the slides, and it says everything I want to say about Agile and the heart of Agile, but also brings in the latest topics that people are talking about. Okay, so this is going to be, I think, quite suitable for you. I always start, I have to start, and pardon me, could I get some water, please? Just water would be lovely. Thank you. I always start with these three words, shuhari, to which I added the word kokoro on my own. These three words come from Japanese, they come from Aikido. They're Chinese words, but the Japanese use them. And they're absolutely perfectly general for all kinds of learning. And it turns out that it's really essential that we have these words in order to be able to dialogue. So shu means follow, ha means break, and ri means leave. And shu follow means when you go to a dojo, or karate or aikido or whatever, they show you a technique and you don't get to ask any questions. You spend all your time just copying the technique. Yeah, learn one technique. This applies to everything. If I'm learning to make pastry for the first time, I will exactly follow the recipe of the pastry. I don't care the altitude or the humidity. I copy all of the instructions exactly. This is the beginner style, right? You come to work and they say, hey, we're going to use XP, Safe, Agile, Prince, whatever, right? And your first question is, how do I do that? And then they give you a technique, and then you copy the technique, and that's the first stage of learning. It applies for everything, right? Teaching children to tie their shoelaces, anything. So after a while, you go, well, that's nice, but it doesn't fit all of the situations. Do you have any more techniques? And then you go into the second stage, and you start collecting different techniques. Now, the hazard is people fall in love with the first technique. We call that being trapped in the shoebox. English pun, ha ha ha. Okay, fine. Being trapped in the shoebox. So people fall in love, they learn Scrum, they never want to leave Scrum. They learn Safe, they learn XP. Whatever they learn first, they never want to change it. But we have to, because the first technique is good in some situations and not so good in others. The third stage is when you've learned so much that it's a full body experience. You're reacting with your whole body, and you do something differently every time according to the situation. Now we have a fundamental contradiction between the shu people and the ri people. The shu people say, give me a technique. The ri people say, there are no techniques. Everything is different every time. And the shu people say, why don't you tell me something? And the ri people say, whatever I tell you will be wrong. Why would I? Right. So we have a fundamental contradiction. And this is one of the reasons for talking about shuhari, thank you, in every lecture, every class I give, because you have to recognize that when you start, you will ask for a technique, and you have to get out of the shoebox because the world is moving so fast and it's so difficult no shoe level technique will bring you up to the level of international competence, right? You have to have some re-level people who will be inventing and changing, and you will always have some shoe level people who will be starting. So this is why I talk about Shuhari all the time. The things that we do in big projects, they're all re-leveled. The world is it's changing all the time. So we have to recognize this progression and understand we need some basic techniques and we need to get out of those basic techniques, okay? So if you guys are doing some agile thing, I don't even know, or I don't worry what it is, that's a good starting place, and you will have to get out of the shoebox and start exploring. Now, about 2015, Agile had become so complicated that I was looking for a way to re-simplify it. And I found this lovely Japanese word, Kokoro, which I now have tattooed on here. I have re-tattoo here, and then I got a Kokoro tattoo there. And I don't want any more Japanese words or tattoos. Thank you very much. Tattoos hurt. And this means a heart or essence, the essence of things. And so when you do the essence of things, you do this radical simplification. And we find this again in all fields. People who've been in the field for 10, 15, 20 years, you usually see it in people above the age of 50. They go, it doesn't have to be that complicated, right? All you really need to know, somebody drilling? Are we lucky that they're doing work today? All you really need to know are these 5 things or 10 things, right? And they try to simplify it down. That's Kokoro. And if you saw the old Karate Kid movie, I don't know if anybody still watches the first one with Mr. Miyagi, wax on, wax off. He's a Kokoro guy. All he does is this. I've been taking tango for 8 years, and all I want to learn to do nowadays is to learn to walk. I go crazy trying to figure out how to walk. And I go to classes from the big masters and I say, just teach me to walk and turn. I don't want any steps. The better I walk, the better the dance will be. Right? The better my posture, the better it will all be. This is Kokoro. You just do the basics forever, 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 forever. Then everything gets better. So what I'm going to talk to you about is the Kokoro of Agile. The heart of Agile is the Kokoro of Agile. And I'm only going to give you 4 words. Collaborate, deliver, reflect, and improve. And you do that forever. Every question you ask me, I will be like Miyagi, right? Kokoro level people are very annoying. You know, re-level people are annoying because you ask them and they always say it depends. Kokoro level people are also annoying because no matter what you ask them, they say practice the basics. Yes, but what about just practice the basics? I have a friend in Serbia, Georgi Babic, who was a professional circus acrobat and did all these weird handstandy things. And he said, when I see a new move, I can usually do it. If I can't do the move, I don't practice the move. I practice the basics until I can do the move, right? This is Kokoro. This is the Kokoro. So when I talk to you about the Kokoro of Agile today, the heart of Agile, look, you all know this. To the extent that you collaborate better, things go better. This is not a mystery. To the extent that you collaborate worse, things go worse. That's so obvious we don't say it, but people don't put money on it. Right? So SAFe is popular. The SAFe guys are making lots of money. They come in and say $4 million for an agile transformation. They change all the job titles, but they don't change any attitude. They don't improve the collaboration. I say of that 4 million, allocate 2 million just to improve collaboration and nothing else. You don't have to touch any job titles. You don't have to any techniques, and already things will go better, right? So it's not the changing of the job titles that's the magic, it's the improving of the collaboration. So I am going around the world trying to get people to put money on something that we already know is important, which is to the extent that the people collaborate better, things go better. And they say, just yesterday I was at a conference and they inevitably say, but what about a 2,000 person company, the big companies? I go, collaborate. I don't have to teach you how to collaborate. Everybody knows how to collaborate. You may not want to. but you know how. So this is the thing, right? Pick up the phone, walk down the hall, right? And do that. And say, but they're in different departments. Yes. And now watch this. The bonus structures in many companies are competing at the top. They can't collaborate because the bonuses, the executive rewards, are in conflict. Now we have a structural issue we have to address. You have to change the compensation plans at the top if you want better collaboration. These are the conversations we get into. And the annual employee evaluation, if collaborate isn't one of the top two things that people are evaluated at the end of the year, they're not going to do it, right? There's nothing for it, right? So this is how we take the word, one word, collaborate, and we have mega effects in an organization. So this is Kokoro. So that's the Shuhari Kokoro. I already gave half the lecture about collaborate. That's not a problem. Because we're taking Agile outside of software, I needed a new definition, a fresh definition. Before 2015, I always referred to the Agile Manifesto, but we're now doing things in villages in Patagonia and India and Tibet, places, and you can't reference that. So I just looked in the dictionary, and the definition of Agile is the ability to move and change direction quickly and with ease. That's all I need. That's all I need. I don't need anything else. The definition for me. We knew what the word Agile meant in 2001, obviously, but that's where I go to. Why do we need it? We care about this word because the world is changing so fast, what they call VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. There's no chance that a 2-year plan can work in these days. Just to say, the reason I am in Europe at all is because in February of 2020, one of my clients in Germany prepaid me. I hate getting paid in advance. I'm paranoid that something like a global pandemic will arrive and shut down global travel between the time I'm paid and the time I'm supposed to show up. Couldn't happen. I don't know why I'm so paranoid, but it happened between February and June of 2020. And after 2 years, they wrote to me and said, by the way, you remember we paid you in February 2020 to come to Germany and do something? Well, you kind of owe us, right? So can you please get on a plane this summer and come to Germany? So that's why I'm in Germany, right? So the world is VUCA. Because the world is VUCA, everybody, every team, every organization needs the ability to move and change direction quickly and with ease. So now we have to find something that we can teach to everybody in the entire world to increase this. It's a skill. It's a skill. It's a skills acquisition activity to get better at this. You don't become agile, you become more agile, right? It's a gradation. So that's what's agile. Why do we care? The problem we're just currently needing to solve is that the agile frameworks, even Scrum, is just too complicated, too many words. You can't go to a village in Tibet with all the words of Scrum. We need something completely simple that applies everywhere and is easy to learn. So that's the topic. My contribution is to choose these 4 words. Collaborate, we went over. Collaborate is where you get the ideas from and where you actually break ideas quickly. Like all you have to do is mention to a friend, I think we should something, and they go, no, because, and you've broken your idea that fast, right? So any organization is making hundreds of thousands of decisions. We make errors in decision making at the rate of 1 in 5. I saw at some report from the nuclear power plants. Doesn't matter, 1 in 5, 1 in 10. You're not going to make 20 decisions in a row and get them all right. So I'll just say 1 in 10. You make 100,000 decisions in the organization, you have 10,000 errors. Boom. You have to find them. How are you going to find them, right? So the first thing is to just mention it to somebody and they say that won't work because, right? The deliver is because I had this discussion yesterday. We're all inside the bottle. We can't see the outside world. We have all our discussions. We think we're right. We all agree. But outside the bottle, they don't agree, right? You have to go outside the bottle. You have to go to the real world and find out what the world thinks. That's the deliver part. So you deliver. They help you find more errors. Those are the real errors, right? Reflect and improve, I separated. They normally happen kind of together because I really want to anchor the fact that you stop for a minute. You pause. You pause. Startups. There was a guy in a startup yesterday and he said, we never pause. It's a startup. We just run as fast as we can. We never pause. I go, yeah, you have to stop. In most organizations, even agile organizations, when I go to the top level, they don't have a reflection workshop, as I call it. They don't stop and pause at the executive level. They're just running as fast as they can. So the reason I separate it is stop for a minute, think about things. Where are we? Check your data, check your emotions. What do we want? What is it we want? Then you can go and improve collaboration and delivery and everything like that. So these are the basics. The U.S. Air Force uses this phrase, brilliance in the basics. They have so many airplanes, they can't teach the pilots how to operate every cockpit. So they want that no matter what airplane a pilot gets into, there are certain basic things they can do no matter what. Brilliance in the basics. That's a great phrase. So everything you do will be improving both your skills, your habits of collaboration. Delivery is technical on a per topic basis, but you have technical people, that's fine. Pause periodically, check data and emotions, and then figure out what to improve. And we'll be talking about micro improvements, okay? That's where we're going. The key thing about this, the Kokoro of Agile, so I'll get away from just a buzzword, Heart of Agile, and I'll say Kokoro so you know I really mean the heart and the essence of this thing. It's not a process, it's not a framework. We're so used in our field, everything is a process and a framework. Scrum is not a process. It's scarcely a framework. Framework is just a fancy word for I don't know what it is, but it's better than process. It's a process plus plus, right? I don't know what it is. Actually, Scrum is what I call a reflective improvement framework. So is David Anderson's capital K Kanban method. So is my crystal stuff. There's a couple of them. They're not processes. They're ways to check where you are and improve things. There isn't a word for that. Okay. So this is not one. And my colleague Sole Pinter, who's an Argentinian lady, came up with the metaphor of a compass, which is lovely because it gets us out of process language completely. You don't go north, right, then east and south and west. You would just go in a circle. No, you say, where would I like to go? Which of these directions is useful to me now? And you go there for a while and then you check it again, right? So the heart of Agile as a compass, as she puts it, the heart of Agile is a compass to decide in which direction to advance the conversations. That's perfect because now we're in a world of conversations, which is correct. And what are the conversations we're going to have? Well, if you want to improve collaboration, you have to talk about trust. First thing, trust. Raise trust, lower fear. You have to talk about culture. You have to talk about rewards, the executive bonuses and the employee evaluation. Those are conversations. They're not processes. You have to work on those if you want to improve collaboration. Those are the topics to have. They're not comfortable topics. At the top level, you can't just put down $10 million and improve trust. It doesn't work. You can't buy that. Like you can change all the job titles with money with it, write a check. You can't improve trust that way. So it takes work. Inside of Deliver, we'll talk about this a lot in the workshop after this, the Carpaccio stuff. You're doing internal flow. I'll show you that briefly. Deliver to learn, deliver for revenue. So those are very tight topics. Inside of Reflect, I happen to be an emotions person. I love it when we're talking about how do you feel, how do you know that? But we live in a world of data, not my specialty, but there's data all over the place, web data, click data, every kind of data. So you do your data analytics and you measure what's happening, what did people like, not like, da-da-da-da-da. And then you improve everything, but the theme is going to make micro changes, just change a tiny, tiny bit. It's less threatening, it's reversible, right? And then you get a success. And so then you get people are addicted to the successes. And some of my colleagues only consult off of the micro changes here. That's all they ever do. And I'll show you the technique. It's a perfect universal technique for doing micro change improvement on any topic whatsoever. Once you have that technique, anybody says a word, you go, yeah, we could do that. So I'll show you that. This is just an expansion. I'm not going to walk through it all. Actually, if you go online, you can find some talks. If you go to the Heart of Agile website, the key talk was I gave in 2018 in Copenhagen, brilliantly filmed, in which I walk through all of this, but it doesn't matter. All I'm showing here is that there are many, many, many conversations to be had. We just did a sample, sort of a mind map or exploration of some of the themes inside of all of those. And I'll show you some of them, but there's nothing that doesn't fit into these 4 words. It turns out that everything fits in here. So you can't mind map it, but that just shows you how it kind of explodes out. So I'm going to just start very briefly with the reflect. And this was interesting because normally I always start with collaborate. But there was an executive in Australia who said leadership teams need to start with the reflect moment before they give any commands or orders, because they have to figure out who they are, what they want, how they are presenting themselves. They have to stop and reflect before they make a move. So he was introducing to his executive colleagues this little compass thing, and he said we executives have to start with the reflect word. And then the micro improvements is fine. So here's the magic technique. The magic technique comes from a field of psychotherapy called solution-focused psychotherapy, which is weird because in solution-focused psychotherapy, they never focus on the solution. So it's exactly the wrong title. The title comes around because in the 1980s, they were trying to get away from Jungian Freudian psychology, which are problem-focused, and you can have a client for life because you always just keep focusing on the problem, and the problem is never going to go away. So you have a client for life. So they decided that they were solution-focused. But then as it evolved, they never talk about the solution either. So I don't like the word solution-focused, so I just say micro-improvements. But in any case, you say, what would actually be a good thing? Well, you name what a good thing is. And you say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are we now? It's horrible, it's 3. It's not so horrible, it's 4. Those are typical kinds of numbers. All right. If it's a 3 or a 4, something is already working a little bit sort of somewhere. Those are your assets, as they say in the capitalist world, right? Those are things you can build on. And literally in the interventions in industry that are written up, they'll find an example of somebody who's making some success at whatever the topic is, and they'll say, let's just do more of that. Let's try that, right? So you just turn the dial up on something you're already doing. That's nice because now we're not introducing change. We're just dialing up something we're already doing. It's familiar. We can do more of it. So that's great. So those are your assets. You build on them. That's the first thing you do. It's a 3 or 4, and these guys, they will question you forever. What's working? Name 10 things that are working. And you go, I got 10 things. And they go, now name 10 more. No, I just named 10. No, name 10 more. And you name 10 more. They go, name 10 more. No, I can't do it, right? But they just go, what's working, what's working, what's working, and even fractionally working. Okay? That's the first thing. You never, ever look at that goal again. That's why it's not solution focused. You then say, what would a 3.5 look like? Or a 4.5, right? If we go from 4 to 4.5, how would we know? What would tip us off that we were at a 4.5 instead of a 4? And you get very concrete. Name 10 things that you would notice, right? You come to office and that topic that you want to improve is just a little bit better. How would you know? Let's just say it had happened, right? Whatever time it took, you come to work and that thing is half a point better. What would you notice in the other people? Is it the way they walk? Is it the way they talk? Is it the way they spend time? So what do you notice? And it turns out that from a psychological perspective, when you do this and you practice what you would notice, you in fact start noticing it. And as you start noticing it, then it kind of like draws you toward it, right? So that's really kind of a magical thing. So it's not solution focused at all. It's micro improvements. So there's a couple of different techniques. I call this the delta delta. I asked them that because I said, your name solution focus isn't any good. Is it okay with you if I called it a delta delta, big delta from 1 to 4, and a little delta from 4 to 4.5? I'll call this the delta delta. And they said, yeah, sure, that's fine. You can do that. So I call it the delta delta technique. And you can apply it to everything. And my colleague Jerry Derbier lives off of this. I mean, he does Heart of Agile and he does project management, but all he ever does is this everywhere he goes because it's non-threatening and it works and it takes any topic. When we come back to team-based initiatives, there's a fundamental model that I use that I built up 20 years ago that's so accurate. I use it to answer all difficult questions and make predictions. And this is the foundation for everything I do. The idea that an organization is like a giant brain, and the brain is doing this kind of a computation, as they call it. It's hard to say computation, but doing this big computation or calculation called how does the world work? And I want some effect in the future. I'm going to take an intervention. You notice there are no products in here, right? I'm going to take an intervention, stick a big fat finger in the world and generate a ripple effects. One of those ripple effects is going to be the one that I have in mind. For a company, it's typically they put money in my bank account, but it could also be that they boil water in Africa, install solar cells, whatever the effect is. There are many consequences, but the whole organization is playing this big prediction game. What's the structure of the world such that if I had a thing and I did the thing in the world, out of all of the consequences is the one that I'm after? Now that's a really, really, really complicated, fragile kind of a computation you can imagine. And the problem is everybody in the organization is doing it differently. And so we'll just take a product company, not you guys, but we take a product company very typically. Senior vice president of sales comes in one day and says, our next strategic project needs to be whatever. Why does this person say that? Well, because they had made a theory of the world. And they said, in order for us to survive the next, whatever's coming up, if we had a this and we produced a that, then da-da-da-da-da, and people would buy our product and we would make money and, so on and so forth. So as one person has this theory, but they don't say the theory. They just say, our next strategic project is this. Everybody in the organization is now on the move in their heads to build a theory of does it work, does it not work? How does the world work? How does this work? If you stick this in that, will that happen? And so there's this giant synchronization activity going on in the organization where everybody's exchanging the world works like this and we should build to this. And if you put this there, no, that won't work because da-da-da-da-da-da. It's all in motion, right? And the world is, of course, moving at the same time. So the people are the neurons in this computation. And people are weird as neurons because they have legs and they wander off. They go on vacation or parental leave and then they wander back and the computation has been all moved. And so part of the action is how do we bring people back up to date on the state of the computation when they go away and they come back? That, for example, is why agile teams have so much stuff on the walls. That's representing what they know about the world at this point in time, right? So this is very fundamental. And we were talking about distributed teams and hybrid work and all this stuff yesterday. This helps you predict what the answers are going to be, right? It's just about moving ideas between minds to try to guess how the world works, what we should build, how that builds. When you stick it in here, what are the effects? Okay, everything is that. And this is where we get to trust, fear, distance, technology, reward. Everything comes from here. Good. So as you're gonna guess, most of everything is attitude based. And there's an interesting question that you get to it that I had a debate with a friend of mine who's very smart and he's a process guy. He loves processes. I hate processes, right? But he's very smart. And so we had an interesting discussion, sort of the chicken and the egg, which comes first, the chicken and the egg. So which do you do first? Do you change the structural elements of a company or an organization, or do you change the attitude elements of an organization first? You have to change them both. And he said, I want to change the structural parts first to permit the collaboration. And I go, I want to change the attitude ones first because I think you could do that. People will gift you with an improved attitude, But then you have to change certain structural things so that that doesn't get in the way. For instance, guess what? First structural thing is cross-functional teams, right? Why? We want to get these neurons together. So that's a structural change. But then people are really helping each other. That's going great. But when it comes time for the annual employee evaluation, they're not evaluated on how well they collaborate. That's a structural problem. So you got to change that. You have to change the bonus things, the reward structure at the top. Those are structural things. So I always come in, the easiest thing is an attitude change, work more collaboratively, and then you have to get certain structural things in place so that it doesn't like fall apart. Yeah, that's that. So those are the topics, we talk about. I'll talk about guest leadership, which is a strange word, but you see words like listen, allow failure, politics, reward, silos. Those are topics in those conversations. This now builds on that neuron metaphor kind of a thing. Two key sentences that are, again, very foundational. The speed of the project is the speed at which ideas move between minds. It's not 100% correct. It's pretty close. It doesn't take into account talent and certain kinds of tools and things, but it's good. But the next sentence, the inversion of that is 100% correct. Anything that slows the movement of ideas between minds slows the project. And so in any of your little groups, have a little group. Take half an hour sometime and just ask that question. List everything that slows the movement of ideas between minds. List them all. And you'll never guess what comes first. Fear. Fear, distance. Spending time writing instead of spending time talking. Different cultural languages, right? There's mechanical things, video instead of in person. Do the list. It's amazing. It's amazing. But fear comes out number one and distance comes out number two every time. So some attitude, some structural. So that's a this is a key thought, a key question that will help you diagnose problems, identify problems, diagnose, and even repair. So you can see we're not in the world of processes here. We're in the world of conversations and attitude. Here's a graph that we discussed a lot yesterday at the conference because we're talking about hybrid work. If we just talk about the effectiveness of communication, right? Person has a thought. They're trying to get that thought into the other person's brain, right? These neurons are trying to do this thing. Two people at the whiteboard is just the most effective thing that I've ever seen because of the number of communication channels or modalities that are in play. When you're talking to somebody at the whiteboard, you're looking at their face. The face is changing. They're moving forward. They're moving backward. They're doing this. You know if they want to interrupt. You know if they want to disagree. And you change your words on the fly by looking at their face. Right? It says that. Vocal inflection, vocal timing. You draw on the whiteboard. You have 2D representations. You have timing between speaking and drawing. You refer back to previous part of the conversation when you point at the whiteboard. All of this is in play with two people at the whiteboard. Every other form of communication that I found, you strip away communication modalities and channels and things get worse. So someone's driving to the airport, you talk to them on the phone, you get that voice stuff, no face, no proximity, no drawings, no cross-modality timing, right? You go to chat, now you lose all that softness that comes with the voice, the reassuring tones that says, I'm not attacking you. And you know how how quickly things go bad in chats and texts and stuff. It's like, boom, because you haven't got all those little reassurances that come from the voice and the face. So that's a curve. And then I asked myself the question, if you couldn't be at the same place at the same time, if you're communicating either across time zones or across days, hours, weeks, months into the future, what could you do? What does that curve look like? And guess what? The answer is you video two people talking at the whiteboard. Not a lecture, but a back and forth. So that the viewer gets to see this person, the body language, and this person will change their presentation based upon what that person's doing. And so when you guys, in particular, you're going to say, dun, 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 writing is slow. Just have first thing in your back pocket is just take a video of two people talking at the whiteboard. When I came up with this in the late 90s, that was really hard to do because you had to get a big videotape machine and da-da-da-da. But now it's phone, tip, server, you're done. If you're working across, if you guys work with a group in a different country, different time zone, right? People do this. People in, let's say, Europe or the US, they do their daily stand-up, they video it, they put it on the server. The people in India, China, wherever, they get up, they watch the video, they see that stand-up, they video their own stand-up, and now we've got the richest possible communication between teams across time zones. Somebody is an executive and they go off on a trip and they do some or client studies, field studies. They come back, they're about to get on another plane. You bring them in, they talk to the people, you video it, they get back on the plane, and now the team has the richest possible, quickest rendition of the person's knowledge possible. So video is like, you should just go to it. And anything that's a written documentation is the worst, right? No face, no voice, no feedback. I'm going to guess what you know, what you don't know. I'm going to guess what your answers, what your questions are. I'm going to guess how to phrase something to make it work for you. Guess, 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 and no feedback. So the paper documentation is nice. It sits still. It doesn't move. You can look at it. It's got nice properties. But not one of the nice properties is the efficiency of communication. Videos are not bad if you do that. So when COVID hit, inside my group, Heart of Agile, we immediately started recording all conversations. So I work with Georgia Babic in Serbia. I work with Sole in Belgium. Those two work separately. So what we learned is, first of all, Loom was fine. We just start a call, hit Loom, record it. Then we learned at the end to run a synopsis. So Georgie and I are talking, and at the end we say, hey, Sole, here's what happened, dot, 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 dot. Takes a minute, and then Sole can look at that first and then decide if she wants to see the whole thing, right? So again, we're doing the neurons, trying to keep track of the computations, because two people will talk, and they'll make a little side decision that they don't mention. They'll make a little agreement that they don't think to mention to everybody else. So this is a way of synchronizing. So that's foundational. I did a study back in 2008, what improves collaboration, and I created a deck of cards, which we sell, but we have problem mailing them out because I made them put them on a website, and somebody in Germany ordered one. You know what it takes to mail one deck of cards from the US to Germany? Like, it's just not even worth it. And in Argentina, you literally can't get them past the border. So we have problems with that. But if you want them, let us know. Sole has a bunch in English. We have them in English, French, and Spanish. I think English will do for you guys. Can be done. And these are micro movements. These are specific words. This one says lower your relative social position. Be it by tone of voice and gesture. So there's a whole topic of helping people feel higher. If you want them to collaborate, you want them to feel a little stronger. You want them to feel a little safer, show you won't hurt. You want to motivate them by getting results, and then you add energy by your posture or your energy levels. So these are some cards. They're just micro movements for collaboration. It's pretty good. Shoe level technique for improving collaboration. So we've got that inside the kit. But I want to talk about decisions. Super important. Right here. This is a picture of an organization. It happens to be software because I was doing that at the time. But it's viewing decisions flowing through the organization. And it turns out that if you think of how decisions flow, it looks like a manufacturing plant. All of Toyota production system falls into place if you look at not work products flowing through an organization, but decisions. Now you have your senior executive who's about to make a decision on who's our strategic partner, what's our strategic release date, or these kinds of things. There's no work artifact. The whole organization is waiting on this one person, and you model this, as a conveyor belt. And of course you have feedback loops, and you have to get checks on things and so on. And so most organizations classically are passing huge batches of decisions around. Like if you have a 300-page requirements document, 50 sentences per page, you've got 50 decisions per page times 300 is what, 15,000 decisions. Goes in a big lump. People work on it. They write 1,000,000 lines of code. They give it to test in a big lump. They find 10,000 errors or 2,000 errors, and they give those back to the programmers in a big lump. And now you have this lumpy stuff going through, and all of the manufacturing people figured out since the 70s that that's the worst possible way to run anything. You have blockages. If the world changes, you have all this work in project. You can't pivot. You're not agile. You're not efficient. You're not happy. It's got basically no upside. This is why we see in the agile world, people are requesting smaller requests from the outside, tiny, tiny bits of delivery with integration and testing. So you have the fewest possible errors flowing back. You have the fewest number of decisions in play flowing through the organization. You take it to the outside world. You find if you're right or you're wrong. If you're wrong, you don't have so much to change. You haven't done very much. And if you're right, you go on to the next thing. So you get all this lovely, inexpensive course correction if you're working on these small flows, right? We don't have single piece flow concept and decisions, but basically if you go 50 decisions per page, the thickness of the document tells you less is better. And that's why the agile crowd uses, 2-week sprints and user stories and all of these things that are small. So this is the science behind why you do that. This is a foundational graph about how you learn over time, right? We've got this organization and it's trying to figure out the world and the solution and the intervention of the thing into the thing. If you take your 1,000,000 lines of code and you integrate it at the end, there's this big surprise at the end when you find 10,000 errors all at one time. And it doesn't matter if it's software or not. Marketing people do the same thing. They make a giant marketing program campaign and they release it on the world all at one time. All of the errors that they made, all of the assumptions that were incorrect, surface when it's too late and all at the same time. So we want to find an antidote to that. So we do, this is like a learning moment. It's like an oops, like either I'm right or I'm wrong, but high odds you're wrong. That's all these little stair steps that you see there, right? And so people are going like, what are we worried about now? What do we think is true, but maybe it matters if we're right or wrong? And it could be that the requirements are this way, the business works that way, that our team has these competencies, that the schedule is correct if you're doing scheduling, that the technology works. There are all these questions. And so people work in a risk reduction manner and they test these things. Try this, try this, try this. Little bits of delivery, sometimes a practice, sometimes a prototype, whatever. And you're learning about the business stuff, the technical stuff, the social stuff, the schedule stuff, right? All of that. If you do that, you end up on the right-hand side up there, this lovely period where the business gets to decide when is the right time to release. The risks have come down. The basic values, elements are in place. If you had to deliver, it might not be beautiful, but it could work. Or you can delay and add little micro features or prettinesses or bring up the quality or whatever you need to do. Instead of business being held hostage by development, because development is working this way, and once you hit that point, you can't speed up anything anymore when you're down at the bottom. It's all built. It's got 10,000 errors in it and you don't know where. You can't speed up anything. Here, business is in control. Integrate now or delay. Deliver now or delay. And that's a sweet thing. So people like me are not afraid of fixed dates. Doesn't bother me at all. In the retail world, there's this thing called Black Friday. It's the Friday after the Thanksgiving in the US. And you can't be late. Friday morning at 0.0000, all hell breaks loose. And you can't have programmers saying, I'll be done when I'm done. And, oh, by the way, I've still got, I don't know. You can't have it. It must be done. So this is the only game to play when you have a fixed date. You must work this way. And I don't care the size of the project. 1-person project, 2,000. I was in Nokia. They said, what's Agile going to do for us? We've got, 150 products and we've got 200 apps per, and we've got N million lines of code and to N,000 people in, some number of countries. So this is the only way you play. Okay, so this is important. I'm watching the time. There's not too much more to cover. How do you get started? Literally, I grabbed this off of Twitter. You make a big X. You write, collaborate, deliver, reflect, improve. You just ask people to put up Post-it notes, what's on their mind, good, the bad, things they want to change, whatever. You stare at it, you talk about it, and you do micro improvements. You cherry pick. What are we going to work on? Yeah, you do the micro improvements thing, right? We want to do whatever that could be. So getting started with this is completely simple, and people do that. The punchline is that we want to prioritize the attitudes. You can't buy attitude, but go after the attitudes first. And then you'll have to fix certain structural aspects so it doesn't ruin the attitudes. Yeah. So the punchline of all of this, we put this on a coffee mug. It's really nice. For collaborate, everybody can. You, each person, everybody can improve the quality of your listening. Listen better and collaboration will already go up. So that's just easy. Deliver something small and soon. Pause, check your data, check your emotions, and then work in small changes. Yeah, so that's, we call it the Heart of Agile, but that's really the roll-up slide right there. And I see that we're fortunate, to be done in time. Happy to take any questions, and you moderate the time if you want us to end in 5 minutes or however long. You be the time.
Yeah, I think we'll take just 1 or 2 questions because then we need to have a break for the next session.
Yeah.
So